this meeting through details located on our website and posted outside the town hall. If for any reason you cannot join or listen to this meeting, please call. I gotta get it back up. Hang on. 942-5586,
No.
extension 2005.
Oh, Linda, okay.
That will get us to Linda. So Bob, our resident weatherman, informed me a few minutes ago that the latest weather report indicated that hopefully the heavy stuff won't start until after lunch. That being the case, we can pray. If anybody loses power or their Wi-Fi, their internet, you give Linda a call. There is the possibility of participating via phone, and she can explain all that to you should that need arise. On that same note, if one person goes down and cannot get in any other way, we do have to shut the meeting down. That's the rule. That being said, if we don't get a full day in today, we're going to need an extra night. My thought is we're already scheduled to meet Monday and Wednesday if needed. I would like to add Tuesday just as a safeguard. My thought again, if we lose it, is there anyone who cannot start Tuesday night at 6:30? Just to give us an extra half hour.
I could do 6:30 to 8, but I have something after 8 on Tuesday.
I understand. Is there anyone who can't start at 6:30?
I'm not too sure, Ginger. I'm starting a new job on Monday, so my next week is going to be pretty hectic
Okay.
schedule-wise. So it's been a pretty crazy week this past week, so I'll have to be touch and go, tell you the truth.
And hopefully, hopefully we're not going to need it.
Just give me FYI. I want to be there, but I don't know what
Yep.
my coming up, so it's gonna be crazy.
Okay. Is there anybody else?
Ginger,
Yes.
Ginger? Me?
Yes, Pam.
I'm not sure if we have a select board meeting. Select board maybe that evening? I don't have my calendar.
No, Hal's shaking his
scheduled,
head
no.
no.
No? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, since I'm not hearing a bunch of us and we would have a quorum, I'm going to ask Linda to post that meeting for Tuesday night as well to work on the town, beginning at 6:30. And if we manage to finish it all come Monday night, then we can cancel it, but it has to be posted. So we need to make that notice as early as possible. And I think that's all the cleanup we need to do. So I will do a roll call. Linda made me some very nice voting tab sheets. So everybody will be called in the same order. So Betsy.
Yes.
Okay. Tom,
Here.
Grace,
Here.
Dan,
Here.
Mike, Moore,
Here.
Steve,
Yes, here, present.
Betty,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Ted,
Yes.
Pam.
Yes.
I know you're there. Bob,
Here.
Eric,
I'm here.
Mike,
Yes.
and yes, I'm here. Brad Hall is excused, as is Brian Winslow. So that being said, we can move on to our minutes from October 21st.
Motion to accept the minutes of October 21st.
Okay, Betty made the motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Mike Jobin,
Mike, thank you.
you're welcome.
Are there any corrections? Okay, since I'm not seeing anybody speaking up, we'll take a vote to accept the minutes as written. Betsy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Grace,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. So as we typically do for this meeting each year, we start off with hearing from department heads to review their budget requests as they presented them to the selectmen. And typically we do the police department first. So I believe Glenn is still there. And police begins on page 8 of our packets.
So are we saving any questions, Ginger, till the end, or how are we gonna handle that?
Usually what I've done in the past is let the department head give a brief overview of how their budget proposed compares to the current budget and then open it up for questions. So I'm not,
Chase has his hand up.
Tom,
And he's muted.
and you're muted.
Unmute. There we go. Many people are unmuted, which means that if you make noise and your microphone detects it, it will highlight your box and turn you into a participant with unmuted. So I'd encourage you, as we listen to the chief, to mute yourselves so that we don't have a lot of extraneous noise. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Steve Robinson. And thank
Okay, Glenn, you want to go ahead and give us an overview?
Sure. Good morning. I'll hit some of the highlights that I would assume you would have questions on. Hopefully I can answer as many of your questions as possible before you even have to ask them. So the full-time officer line, you see that's down about $7,000. So there's a reduction there. The big difference is the overtime line, which is line 140, and the part-time officer line, which is 113. The overtime line shows a reduction of $16,000, and the part-time line shows an increase of $21,000. We always run out of money every year using our part-timers. We rely on them heavily, about 2 shifts a week for each officer. So come towards the end of the year, we kind of have to say, we're out of money, see you next year. And they kind of just take some time off until January 1 rolls around again. And unfortunately, with the default budget, we haven't been able to increase that line. So we're hoping this year that this budget passes and we can have some more money in there. So I tried to offset that increase in the part-time line by reducing the overtime line. So it's a $21,000 increase, but 16,000 of that is kind of being transferred to that overtime, that part-time line. So, there's only really about a $5,000 increase there. Canine line is reduced down to $1. We haven't had a canine unit in a couple of years now. But with the default budget, it keeps coming up. So again, that's reduced down to $1. And the other big increase is, or the $3,000 increase for the cruiser purchase, which is line 691. Contracted services. These are our report management system, our water for the PD, postage meter rental, just long-term contracts, if you will. So each of those go up between 3 and 5% per year. So our report management system went up 5% this year. So that's the increase there. I think that's pretty much the highlights.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about a line for Glenn? Paul? Unmute yourself. Paul, take yourself off mute. There you go.
It works better, doesn't it?
It does. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
What's your question?
In one of my written questions I sent in, I was looking for where the detail income funding was kept, and the chief answered me on a special duty fund. Like, I'm unable to find that anywhere in the budgets or in the revenue, and I'm just curious what that account is, and am I just missing it, or is it somewhere I'm missing?
So the income from our detail work is held in the Special Duty Capital Reserve Fund, I think the total name is. So that's held there. I know it's not in the budget, so I don't know. When I inquire with it, I go through Sandy Prioli. She's able to let me know what the balance of that fund is.
Can you just tell me how much that fund typically makes in a year?
At last view, it's all dependent on how much it makes per year. It's all depending on the details. The last number I had was around $80,000 in that fund.
I'm just wondering why we wouldn't use that fund like we use the fire fund for buying cruises and things of that nature. I know you bought one this year, but I mean.
Yeah, we do. So we try to typically hit that fund when we can. We certainly don't want to deplete it. That's also the fund that pays the town back for the officers' payment. So that fund also pays for that. But when we get a good amount in there, we do hit that fund for a cruiser rather than the budget.
Well, that fund has everything in it. It has not just what the police department is gaining from the use of the town equipment, basically, but it also has the funds for paying the officers.
That's correct.
I guess that answers my question. And pretty good job on holding the line.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for our police chief? Yes, Betsy.
I have two lines on his that I went through and double checked all the salary lines all the way through the budget. And there are several changes that don't match up. So his full-time line and his part-time line do not match up to the sheet that we got. So the part-time line would be $68,993.60 when you add those three up. And the full-time line would be $295,755.20. Those are the two adjustments I saw on his, which will affect FICA, Medicare, retirement, and all those numbers. So those will need to be adjusted.
Betsy, can you give me those numbers again, please?
Sure. You want the full-time line first?
Sure.
295,755.20.
Okay.
And the part-time line, 68,993.60. And when those are corrected, it will should automatically trigger the others to correct.
Well, not looking for much of a difference in the full-time, but the part-time.
Well, the sheet should match the salaries, and I'll
Oh,
give
no,
you the
no,
corrections as we go.
No, I agree. I don't have an issue with that. I'm just wondering how the chief ended up losing what, 16,000?
We've got three figures that make that up, three part-timers. On the wage sheet.
Madam Chair, it's Walter.
Walter, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you know, that was kind of a last minute report that was put together, and I struggled a little bit with the numbers and went back and forth with the chief, and it could be that I may have missed a couple of numbers or perhaps a number of hours. So I'll review that again with the chief and update that report for Monday to make sure that that does tie together.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Walter, what I did is I multiplied them all across with the hours, the wages, and the numbers on that one on your sheet are correct. They just don't add up. When you got 24, 22, and a 21,000, it's more than 52,000. So it's just the adding of those three that is wrong, and the adding of the full-time that's wrong. The numbers work across okay.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, please, Glenn.
So in order to keep the increase low, I didn't give, because, we got part-timers that can't work because they're full-time jobs. So that increase is what I felt comfortable increasing that line to. It's not exactly the 2 shifts per week per officer amount in there, because I didn't want to increase that line that dramatically. So I think that's where my number of the 52 comes in, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you're okay with the 52,875 on that line?
I am.
Okay. And we're looking at, well, it's only about 500, if that, on the other line.
That one's minor, but so should the wage sheet be corrected to reflect that?
Well, the wage sheet that I'm
That's why-
looking at,
That's why I
is-
only gave them the hourly of what the part-timers make,
right,
because I didn't, it's not set in stone. They could say, hey, chief, I can't work for the month of October because I've got extra work at my full-time job or whatever. So that part-time fund it's not set in stone, if you will. So that's why I gave the hourly rate rather than what their
Right.
yearly rate would be, because they may not work several weeks throughout the year.
okay. Well, my feeling is if the chief is okay with that part-time line, and it makes sense when it's part-timers, and how often will you need a part-timer, and are they available, and that kind of thing. I would suggest that one remain as it is without Walter needing to do any additional checking. If the chief is good with it, then I think we can be good with it. However, Betsy did point out that there may be other salary lines that might not match up exactly the way it looks like they should. And I appreciate you, Walter, being willing to double check any other lines that we might happen to come across with a difference. And we can go from there. Does that make sense?
Certainly, we'll do that. And I think I can also take the chief's number and back into the other numbers by adjusting the amount of hours per year that are per shift that I had estimated, and make it work out to adjust the other items that are influenced by that, like the FICA and the MEDI and so forth.
Right. Well, it looks like he's willing to keep the part-time salary as here, so nothing would need to change with that.
No, just a wage sheet,
Right.
so they
Right.
tie in.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Glenn? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So Glenn, thank you very much. I would like to say enjoy your day, but I suspect you may be rather busy.
It's looking that way. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Traditionally, we do the library next. And the library section begins. One of the things I was going to do this morning was do my little tab so I could find it easily. Getting up at 8 o'clock didn't allow for that time.
Ginger, page 17.
Thank you. I knew somebody'd have my back. I get my fingers to work. Okay. Miss Donna, what would you like to tell us about your proposed budget?
Good morning. Well, I'd like to read a statement that I read to the selectmen when we had our budget review with them, because I think it gives the budget committee an overview of what the library has been doing.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce our trustees. We have Gail Toby, Chair, Pat Valancourt, Secretary, Betty Smith, Treasurer, Norma Haru, Alternate, Irene Kreider, Alternate, and Margaret Walker, Alternate. And our staff, we have Valerie Twombly, Technology Librarian, Tammy Schroeder, Technology Library
Donna,
Technology Assistant.
Donna, I'm going to
Annette
interrupt
Blake
you
and
for 1
Diane
second.
Kazarian as library assistants, and Sharon Young as library aide.
Donna,
So here's a statement from the March 31st issue of the Atlantic, which also kind of sums up what we've been doing. America's public libraries have led the ranks of second response.
Donna, I'm going to suggest that you close your video. That might give you more power. See how that works?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello.
Yep. Can you hear me? You
I'm
should
here.
be all set.
Okay.
I think she's super
Is that
delayed.
better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've started offering curbside services and outside document and notary services. I can. Can you hear me?
We can. You're good. We hear you.
I'm talking. Can anybody hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can I suggest someone who has Donna's?
I am getting an
Cell phone
unstable
texture?
internet connection message here at the library. Do you want me to try calling in?
Yeah, Linda, what number would you
Okay.
call in on?
So we're offering curbside pickup, outside document and notary services. I can.
Ginger,
Yes, Linda.
I would suggest that one of the trustees that can hear, it sounds like she might be on a cell phone call with somebody, but if someone who has her number could call her and let her know that the numbers are listed on the agenda on the website to call in if she wants to do that. But in the meantime, we could move on and go back to her.
Either that, well, we can do that. And Gail, I'm wondering, can you take over or Betty? You need to unmute yourselves. Hi, Gail. Nope, you're muted again.
Okay, I will do my best.
Okay, Gail. Perhaps.
So,
I'm wondering if the easiest way to go forward until we can connect with Donna again is to see if any of the budget committee members have questions on any of the library lines. And then if so, perhaps you can answer them.
okay.
Okay, budget members, does anyone have any questions regarding any lines in the library? I see Betsy's hand up.
Okay, I don't have a question here. This is the only section, or one of the few sections in the budget that worked out all the way through on wages.
Oh, excellent. Paul? Unmute yourself.
Doing it again, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
I submitted some questions earlier, particularly line 113. I was asking, are they adding a head? And I got an answer back. It basically said, no, we're not adding any heads. That's the substitute line item, which 113 is not the substitute line item. In any event, there's $18,000 or $19,000 that appears in 2021 for a technical assistant. So I'm just curious what that is if it's not a head.
The technical assistant was in another line item. And it was like you couldn't see it. We did not add another one. They're part-time positions. And we hired a person to fill that position. But we've just had the bookkeepers correct it so that we have them in the same spot so that we can see them, not somewhere else. And I don't know why that happened, but it happened. But no, we did not add another position.
Yeah, but the other three line items didn't go down the equivalent of the ad. So if it was always there, where was it?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I know that it was, you couldn't always see it. I don't know how to explain this. We couldn't always see it because it was put somewhere else. And I don't know, but we did, honestly, we did not.
Okay, Betty has her hand up, and as a trustee, I'm gonna ask her to respond. Betty?
I believe the technology assistant was in with the aides and assistant before, but it is a different position.
Okay, so.
And the math doesn't add up, that's all. If you took 18,000 out of that account and put it in a separate account, yeah, that account should have went down 18 grand, and it doesn't appear to have gone down 18 grand.
Was it perhaps an increase in hours or whatever? We can get an answer to that later. Donna, are you back up?
I am. I'm finally able to get in by phone.
Oh, good. Okay. Did you hear the question?
Sorry about that.
Oh, no.
There's definitely an echo on the phone too, so I'll do my best.
Okay. Did you hear the question that Paul had regarding?
caught part of it. I know several years ago, the technology assistant position was included in the line with the aides and assistants. So even when there was a question forwarded to me about, it looked like that was a new position. When I look at my expense report, the codes are still with 113 being the sub. So it looks like on the Towns Ed, they've recoded it. So the library technology assistant is now 113 and the library sub is 114. So neither one of those are new positions. So again, the 113 technology assistant was originally included in what now shows up as the 111 aides and assistants. So I think that does help clarify some of the confusion. I hope.
Doesn't work. That's all.
And the trustees did, if you look at the 2021 library trustee salary recommendations graph that I believe went to the budget committee, the trustees have detailed out everything with the salary increases they're proposing and some extra hours. That wouldn't be the difference for the math.
A lot of difference, almost 20 grand. Well, it's 12 grand, I guess. I mean, the only other question I had is the 8,000 increase is really 20,000 because you've moved the health, life, Medicare stuff that was in the 19 and 20 adopted budgets out of the 21 budget.
Right. And again, that was at the town level. They made the decision to move all of those lines.
Yeah, I know we did that.
But you are correct.
Last year, I thought, but I just say you don't get to count it twice. That's all. It shouldn't be in the 207 if you're showing me an increase or a decrease, or the 206, I guess, 2020 adopted. So, I mean, the library's budget increase is actually $20,000 over last year.
No.
Yes. We're still paying that $11,000 somewhere else in the operating budget. It's just not in the library's operating budget anymore.
I know where you're going, but it's not. The sheet that we're looking at right now is comparing apples to apples. There is no life insurance and whatever showing in the 2019 adopted columns for the library.
Yes, there is. Page 17, lines 220 through 220, 230, I guess. Medicare, retirement, and Social Security.
That's based on salary. That has nothing to do with life insurance or dental.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke. I'm sorry. All I'm saying is those numbers exist in the 19 and 20 adopted budgets and don't exist in the 21 budget. So the real increase to the library's budget is $11,000 more than what's stated here. That's all.
Okay, John?
Yeah, if I may, in the documentation that you have is a sheet near the end of the library presentation, which helps to explain this in detail as far as what they did with the various positions and how they adjusted it, so that together it shows what the net change is if you were to look at that sheet. I think that might explain the questions that you have.
I'm not going to explain this one, but anyway, we'll just let it go. I'm just saying that the budget is really 10 grand more than what this states.
Thank you, John. Any other questions, Paul?
Nope.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions regarding the library? Okay. Seeing none, I guess we can move on, and I see that Mark is on the phone, so we can move ahead to fire.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks, Donna. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, and Fire begins on page 9. And Mark, would you like to give us an overview? We do just the operating budget right now. We'll get to your warrant articles afterwards.
All right. So the largest adjustments this year are in salaries. As you know, we've been under default budget for several years. So these changes, I think, reflect what the budget should be. The first increase is under the fire chief salary. We obviously never budgeted for that. So that's $62,000 more than what we had budgeted. Officer stipends with the adding a full-time chief, we didn't fund those, so that reduces 10,000. And then because we took one of the full-time positions away, that reduces the full-time salary line by $35,700. The part-time salary, again, it reflects more what we've been spending in part-time salary to, as much as possible, put 2 people on duty 24/7. I went as far back as 2016, and that was the full-time, the part-time salary line then was 57,570. And in that year, we spent $80,000. This year, we're on track to spend $113,000 on part-time salaries. So the $42,000 increase is reflective of what we're actually spending. And the feedback we've got from the people is they want more coverage. So that will allow us to, like I said, as much as possible, put 2 people on 24/7. A slight decrease in firefighter callback salaries, again, based on what we're spending. And then, there's some increases for retirement and that are kind of not really a choice. Contracted services, again, that goes back to what we're actually spending. We've been on the default budget for a number of years. Contracted services covers things like ambulance billing, paramedic intercepts, software upgrades, software licenses and whatnot. Dispatch service went up about $3,500 this year. Cell phones went up a couple thousand. We did decrease the building maintenance line. And then as we go down, you can see most of the increases are based on what we're actually spending. It's difficult to compare this year to what we'll need next year because of COVID. A lot of things we haven't been able to do. We haven't been able to do training. Obviously, we'll have to catch up a lot on that next year. So those lines went up slightly. A lot of things went up based on inflation and vehicle maintenance. Our fleet's not getting much newer. Hopefully we'll get a little relief in that moving forward with the new ambulance coming in the end of the month and the tanker coming in June. But that's really all I have. Any questions?
Okay, do we have any questions? Betsy? There you go.
I just want to point out on the wage scale for Walter, on Adams, he goes down in labor grades. So maybe there's definitely a correction that needs to be on the wage scale for that. Goes from a labor grade 15 down to a labor grade 9 and the rate changes. So that's on page 1 of the wage scale. Another thing to point out on the part-time wages is chief has now added back the 4th person, which was sort of absorbed when the chief position was put in. There used to be 4, but they were full-timers and not. So now it's the chief and the extra one's been put back in. So I would think some of that part-time line should come down because that person's now moved into the full-time line. comment on the forestry line. I know we tried to take the $1 out and put zeros, but I would think that stands a good chance of being used. So I would
Which line is
suggest
that, Betsy?
that is 193.
Thank you.
And then down under contracted services, it went from 12,500, which has been sort of what we've been budgeting over the years, up to 19,000. So there's an increase of 6,500 in there. If we can get an explanation on what that is, I know we broke it out, but something is in there that didn't used to be in there. And those are my big questions.
Chief, you
So-
want to pick up on those?
Well, I'm confused as to why we're saying we've added a full-time position. We haven't.
Okay, there were 4 full-time before,
Yep.
and when the chief was put in, then you
Mm-hmm.
went down to, there were 2 full-timers because some of that third full-timer was absorbed in your wages. So now you've gone back to putting that position back in. So there's 4 full-timers counting you, but your wages were higher than what the full-timers were. So it comes out to like maybe 4.5. In other words, 1 position hasn't been filled since you started, and that's now been put back in. So that should take away from some of the part-time
Well,
wages.
The money was never taken out for that full-time person. The problem is with the default budget, we haven't been able to fill that 4th position, but the position's never been taken out.
I don't mean the position, I mean the money was sort of absorbed into your salary.
That was the 4th position that was absorbed into my salary.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right. And so we haven't added or subtracted any positions. We just haven't been able to fill the 4th position with the default budgets.
Well, when you put the 2 lines, your line and the full-timers together, that's the difference. So does, however you want to state it, but there's, yeah,
Yep.
there's an increase because of the chief's position.
Correct. Yeah. As far as contracted services, I'm not aware that I've asked for increases in that line, but obviously since I've been here, we've been under default budget. We've spent approximately $19,000 the last 2 years in paramedic intercepts, in ambulance billing, in software, in internet access. Nothing has been added to my knowledge. It's just that it's costing us more money. If we make more money on the ambulance revenue, that line goes up because we pay a percentage of our of what we make on the ambulance. So this year we've made about $20,000 more on the ambulance. So 4% of that goes right to that contracted services line. I think because of the default budget, that line's been underfunded. And as you can see in my budget projection, I expect to spend about $20,000 this year in contracted services.
Hold on, Betsy.
Just
Paul,
want to speak to that one.
well, hold that thought. Look, Paul, you had a question?
Well, yeah, we may be talking about the same thing. I'm just looking at the summary sheet at full line 330, which says 19,000. And the operating budget for line 330 says they only asked for 4,000 next year. Now, I also see that they've added paramedic intercept, ambulance billing, and internet access line items, which I'm not doing the math that fast, but it looks like it might add up to the 19,000. So has those 3 line items been pulled out of contract services and put down here in these 3 new line items, 332, 3, and 4?
That's correct. I felt it was important to do that for transparency, so you knew exactly what we're spending money on. Contracted services seemed like kind of a could appear as though it was a slush fund, and it's not. And I wanted people to be aware of what we're spending on paramedic intercepts and ambulance billing and so forth. So it's the same money, just more transparency.
Betsy, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, the transparency is great. Before the chief came, that was only a paramedic line, intercept line. He's added some other things in there, but historically, and I checked with the prior paramedic, that was only paramedic, and it was running, well, in 2019, it was right around 14,000. And so far right now, according to what we have on here, it's about 14. But yeah, breaking it out is great, but some other stuff has been added in there that didn't used to exist before. So I just want to
So-
point that out, that there's a difference.
Betsy, I just, like I said, you have more institutional knowledge than I do. Where would we have taken out ambulance billing?
Before, it was a percentage that they took before we got, so now you're getting billed for the billing. Before, it was a percentage they took off the top before they sent us the check. So there's the difference there.
Okay.
That was with the other company.
Mark, I'd just like to clarify, if I could, what is covered under the
Sure.
$4,040 currently on line 330? I see you've broken other things out, but what remains under contracted services?
Things like software, software licenses. I don't have that right in front of me, to be perfectly honest with you, but I can
Okay.
definitely provide that for you. But I
That
know,
would be helpful, yeah, just to,
um,
for curiosity.
okay. Yep.
So I do have another question for you, and I've asked for clarification different times. And I don't recall that I got what I was looking for. How many active full-time firefighters do we have at this time
We
that
have
are
four.
routinely working?
Four.
Okay. So if you can explain to us the way the schedule is working, when are the full-timers working? I know the goal is to try to get to 24/7, which
Yep.
is a laudable goal and not easily reached. But at this point, with the full-timers, generally, how is that working?
Okay, so I generally work on a scheduled shift, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. So then Adam, our full-time captain, he works Mondays and Wednesdays, 24 hours each. Then we have Addie, she works Tuesdays and Fridays, 24 hours. And then we have Nick Carey, and he works Saturday and Sunday, 24 hours. To round out the 7 days a week, we have one of our part-timers, Elaine Kerouac, and she works 24 hours on Thursday. So that provides us, I'm on duty during the day, during the week, and then 7 days a week, we have a full-time person or Elaine scheduled to work at 24 the rest of the days. Does that answer your question on the full-time staff?
Yeah, so on Saturday and Sunday, you have one full-timer?
Yes, one full-time
Scheduled.
scheduled. Yep.
Okay, and 24 hours, so if they came on, I'm just using an hour here. It would be 7 a.m., let's say Monday to 7 a.m. Tuesday. Would that
Yes.
be
Yeah. So
an accurate example?
yep. When Adam works Monday, he comes in at 7 in the morning on Monday, and he actually leaves at 7 in the morning on Tuesday.
Okay. And then the part-timers, how do you typically utilize them?
Well, some of our part-timers, like Elaine Kerouac, she works a 24 every Thursday. So she has a fixed schedule. The rest we put out the schedule through a software program called When to Work, and people will sign up to work those shifts, either the night shifts or from 4 in the afternoon till 7 in the afternoon. We call that the bridge shift. And then, it's sign up for when you can work. So as we add in, our part-time staff and our call staff can sign up to work those shifts.
Okay, well, the reason that I was asking is because frankly, more often than not, quite a bit more often than not, when I drive by the Narrow Station, I don't see anybody there but perhaps your car and occasionally not your car. So I was wondering how the staffing is working. Are people allowed to cover shifts from their home?
No, we have not. Obviously, people cover this from their home and come in on callbacks, but we haven't paid people to stay home. No.
Okay, well, the only thing I can go by is how many cars, if any, I see in the driveway at the Narrow Station, and when I don't see any cars.
Well, keep in mind, we've only just recently hired our 2 additional career firefighters, so that this is the first time we've been at full staffing, and we've had some issues with quarantining for the pandemic, and we've had some positive cases of COVID in the department. So we have struggled as of late.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from anyone regarding the fire? Betsy, you need to unmute.
The question for the chief on contracted services, the 4,000. Would that be the 2 life pack contracts and some of the other medical equipment that's in that line?
Yeah, so there is internet access. So we have the defibrillator, as you know, the defibrillators in the ambulance have a modem to send EKGs to Concord Hospital. So there's a monthly fee associated with that, and that comes out of contracted services as well. And then we have our tablets in the ambulance. We're actually transitioning them over to making the ambulance as a hotspot. But right now we have an iPad in the ambulance that has internet access as well, and those fees come out of contracted services.
Okay, any other questions regarding the fire department proposed operating budget? Okay, seeing none, while we have the chief on the line, I'd like to take a look at, there are 3 warrant articles. Actually, there are 4 warrant articles, 3 of which are pretty much regular maintenance. I'm just gotta find my list again. Oh, what did I do with it? So I know article number 2, I believe, is just the continuing payment for, it's either the tanker or the ambulance, one or the other. I have temporarily misplaced my warrant.
Ginger, while you're looking for it, can I just ask Walter to add something?
Certainly. What do you need to add?
On the ambulance one, we don't have the what year of whatever. We try to keep track of if it's 2 of 7 or 3 of 5 or whatever. So that we don't
good
lose
point.
track.
Good point.
We can certainly do that.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, so I found it finally. Article 2 is the fire truck for the continuation of the 56,672. And obviously, if that isn't approved, then the truck goes back. But Mark, you indicated that we won't get the truck until June.
That's correct.
So if you could refresh our memory of what we have actually spent so far toward that new truck. Have any payments been made as yet? I recall
No.
hearing something about upon delivery, but I just want to verify.
Yeah, no payments have been made on the fire truck or the ambulance at this point.
Okay, so moving to the next article, which is the ambulance, which you indicated we should have, you thought the end of the month?
The end of the ambulance is scheduled for delivery to the dealer this month, and then we should get the ambulance sometime around the 1st of January.
Okay, so come the 1st of January, what are we going to need to pay to accept delivery?
We are going to have to pay our $100,000, which was our down payment, and our first annual payment, which is, I believe, $29,000. But that's based on our guesstimate on the interest rate, and I think our interest rate is going to be a little lower than, actually quite a bit lower than we anticipated. So it'll be less than that.
So I'm confused. Weren't those finance arrangements already agreed to and signed for?
No, but we didn't want to do that because we felt the interest rates were going to go down, and they so the town administrator and I are working on getting the best deal on interest rates right now.
All right. And so we, in that same line, that same concept, when we finally take delivery on the tanker, presumably in June, it would be the amount of the down payment.
And the first
Excuse
year.
me, plus a year's payment.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. The next article for the fire department is the communications equipment purchase.
Yes.
So if you just can refresh everybody's memory, Mark, I'd appreciate it.
So we implemented a 3-year plan to replace our aging radio equipment. We got a grant from the state probably 16, 17 years ago, I'm thinking now, to replace all our radio equipment, and all that radio equipment is now aged out. So rather than put a warrant article forward to spend $100,000 on radios, we broke that down into 3 years. This is the second year of the plan, and it's going very well. And we were able to basically get what we asked for last year, and this year we'll be buying more radios to fill out the plan.
Okay, does anyone have any questions on that, on the communication equipment purchase proposed article?
I have one back on the ambulance, though, on the ambulance on the fire truck.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Are we going to get a copy of the current revenue status for the ambulance?
Yes,
I haven't seen it.
I do provide that to the Board of Selectmen every month.
Yeah, we have copies of that.
Okay, Hal, perhaps someone on the board could get a copy of the most recent revenue sheet to Linda so that she could send it to all of us as an email attachment.
I'll do that right now.
Oh, terrific. Thank you.
Then maybe it's just me, and I haven't found it yet, but I haven't found the summary sheet of all the capital reserve accounts. Don't you guys usually send us one of those?
Yes, we did get it.
All right, I'll look harder.
If you don't find it, Paul, we'll touch base and I'll get you a copy.
Okay.
Are there any other questions regarding the fire truck, the ambulance article or the communications equipment articles? Betsy?
Just that the ambulance should be second of 7, I believe. Is that correct? For
It is
payments?
the second.
7, I believe, right?
I believe
you-
so too.
I believe you're correct, Betsy.
That way we don't lose track of it later.
Right, right. And Walter, you indicated you would be able to make that adjustment for the final article, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so the last remaining fire department article is it's on the last page of your 4 pages of proposed warrant articles. And this is the fire department command vehicle. So Mark, I would ask you to give us an overview and rationale, please.
Yep. So, first of all, the replacing of the 2006 Ford Explorer is in the CIP as a project. The current command vehicle, I'm sure people have gone through the same thing with their own vehicles, where it's beginning to cost more than it's worth to maintain. The vehicle is a 2006. It is low on miles, but it has a lot more idle time on it where it's been idling. I had our mechanic look at it. It's in the next year, he anticipates it's probably going to need another $5,000 worth of work. We spent $5,000 on it last year. With all that in mind, I propose to replace that 2006 Explorer this year with a pickup truck with a cap on the back that will be much more functional than the Ford Explorer. We actually came in with our estimates $5,000 less than what we had anticipated in the CIP, so we're about $45,000, and that's for the vehicle, the matching cap, the slide-out tray for the back, to put all the lights on it and all the graphics and be ready to go once we spend the money. I think, with a new vehicle, we get at least a 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty on it. So we should have 3 years where we have very little vehicle maintenance, which will help our vehicle maintenance line to be stabilized a little bit. The vehicle the funding for that vehicle would come out of the fire side of the ambulance revenue account. So there would be no impact on taxes.
Okay, I'm going to jump in at that point on your last note, Mark. Again, because I've been involved in this stuff for many years, I've got history that perhaps some others don't have. That account that we take the trucks and the ambulance out of is for strictly firefighting equipment and ambulance, not for additional vehicles. Its intent is, I understand that a legal opinion was obtained, but again, without knowing the history of that account and how it was set up and why the voters voted for it in the way that they did, was not to purchase additional vehicles. It was to purchase firefighting trucks and ambulances. So I have a concern there.
If I could provide some input on
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
I actually have the Article 10 from 2002 when the account was established. And the only restriction on that was that the 30% had to go to ambulances. There was no restriction on the other vehicles. And in fact, in 2006, we purchased the existing command vehicle out of that revenue account.
Right. Moved by Mrs. Lang,
I'm sorry? Hal, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Article 10, Mrs. Lane moved and Selectman Breyer seconded to see if the town would vote to raise the appropriate sum, $25,000, for the purchasing and equipping new fire department vehicle and to fund this through the fire rescue department vehicle capital reserve. The police cruiser that they were using had a lot of mileage and was in bad repair. It was then voted by a show of cards and the article carried.
Okay, thank you for the history, Hal. I appreciate it. Are there other questions from anyone or comments regarding the vehicle? Betsy, and then Paul.
Ask the Board of Selectmen and the chief to do a projection out for the next maybe 8 years to make sure that we can fund all of this stuff that we want to take out of that fund. Because in 2023, I believe, is engine 3. And we'll still have the ambulance, the tanker that we're paying on. And my concern is that there won't be enough. Yes, it is 2023. There won't be enough to do that engine at that time. So can we see that all of those expenses projected out and see if there's going to be enough money?
Well, it's in the CIP. And every year that we do the CIP, obviously it's through the planning board, so we don't control it directly. But they do plan that out through the CIP. And I guess to your point, Betsy, if we didn't have sufficient funds and we really needed the vehicle, we'd have two choices, at least in my mind. The first would be pony up the money at that point in time through another source to add to the fund, or delay another year, i.e. redo the CIP and extend out the timing of it.
Okay, I have a couple of points. The CIP is a list of stuff that got put on here. Nobody is looking at the financial side of that and projecting it out, number one. And secondly, there's an awful lot of stuff coming out of that account that I would think it would be prudent and wise to project it out and make sure that we have enough to do this. Just because it's listed on, the planning board did not project all those out. They don't do the financial end of it. And I'm just asking for the financial side to be done so that we know that we have enough money.
Al, did you
That's
ever
my
respond?
request. That's my request, Ginger. Thank you.
Paul?
Oh, my point was basically what Betsy was talking about, because I remember last year, we were very concerned that that fund didn't have enough money for the tanker and the ambulance, never mind another truck and then another tanker in a couple more years. So back to my original question, I'd like to see that ambulance fund and how well it's been doing this year and what's currently in that capital reserve.
I can give you all the balances, but the fund that we're planning on taking it out of is not the ambulance side, because as folks said, that side was specifically delegated to the ambulance.
I understand that.
On the tanker side, we never go below $190,000, even with the down payment and the lease payments on the tanker.
Yeah, I'd still like to see him.
Okay.
If I
I'm
could
sorry,
also,
who did I interrupt?
the chief, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Last year we did have, not this past year that we just finished, but year prior, we did have a pretty bad year with the ambulance revenue. And our projections for this year's revenue were based on that bad year. And I would like to point out that we've already exceeded our projections. I believe we projected $90,000 in ambulance revenue this year. And as of November, we've exceeded that by about $4,000 with December's revenue yet to be deposited.
Okay, and we're going to be getting an update on those numbers.
I already
Hal, I
sent it to
believe you.
Linda.
It's
Terrific.
already been sent. I've already sent it out.
Oh, you're so efficient. Thank you, both of you. So I just want to make a comment, if I may, on the CIP plan. And that is, it's a plan.
Right.
And all of the department information that's in here, as far as the year needed and what the funding source is and whatever, is provided to the planning board through the different departments. Because the planning board doesn't know what any department is going to need for equipment or materials or what have you. And in looking at the information that was provided by the fire department to the planning board, in addition to what Betsy had already brought up, we've got potentially in 2023, remounting ambulance 1 on a new chassis, projected cost $200,000. Replace pumper engine 3, potential cost $750,000. In addition to the ongoing payments for the current ambulance and the tanker that we've just bought. So yes, I have some concerns about, now obviously remounting the ambulance on a new chassis can be put off. It's not set in stone that it has to be done there. I don't know about the condition of engine 3, if that's going to if that can wait, perhaps. My point being, there's a lot of stuff that seems to be projected as being needed this year, next year. Me personally, I'm really not in favor of tapping that fund again, and I've got basically the same car that the chief's car is, and I don't know, it just, for the sake of another year, particularly in view of taxes going up and whatever, I think spending $5,000 potentially on repairs versus $45,000 for a new vehicle. Well, a new vehicle's nice.
Well, I think when the board discussed this, we were focused on the operating budget, and we said, here's a way to save $5,000 in the operating budget. And I guess in terms of how we plan out and buy the different equipment, I think Betsy's right. We need to do the analysis, and I'll just forewarn people, when we do the analysis, my expectation, I'm not trying to say I've done the calculation exactly, but my expectation is that the ambulance revenues will not themselves cover all the equipment that we need to buy, and we will need to look at other revenue sources. That said, we have a total obligation to the town to fund these things appropriately. And like I said, at least the board members that voted on this in the affirmative felt that it was better to use money that we had saved up and not put it into the operating budget. That was the whole logic.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Linda,
just a point of order, please.
certainly.
With all due respect for the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the process in the past has always been to have the appointed selectman representative speak for the Board of Selectmen. If they choose to
Correct.
give the okay over to somebody else, then they do that.
Yeah.
Just so there's no confusion as to who's speaking as the selectman's representative. And my understanding is Ms. Sanderson is that rep. So I don't know if, Madam Chair, if you want to continue that typical practice.
Yes, we should
You
just,
told Pam to do that.
yeah. Hal likes to speak, that's all.
Hey, once I
Oh,
get
we
the mic,
know.
it's tough to get it
We
out of
know.
my hands.
I know, I know. Thank you, Linda, for pointing that out. I
Yeah,
appreciate
it
it.
was a good point.
Yep.
So, Madam Chairman,
Yes, Pam.
I'm going to just turn my camera off. So, Madam Chairman, on my behalf, I will be deferring to John Skirton and Hal Kreider on occasion. In this point here, I felt that Hal was addressing over towards the department of the fire department. So I am okay with Mr. Kreider speaking at this point.
Okay, I appreciate that, Pam. For our future discussions, when you want to defer over to Hal or John or whatever, if you could just state that. And that'll keep things a little clearer as far as the record goes.
I will certainly, Madam Chairman, and I know at some point you will be addressing direct towards me, and we will be handling it in that manner. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, and I have one other request. Can you just refer to me as Ginger? Because Madam Chairman makes me feel very old.
Oh, I was going by the I was going by your protocols where it said address the chairman.
No, we'll talk about that later. Just call me Ginger. Betsy, I see your hand up.
Okay, so the one Linda emailed, is that the one that came from Sandy or is that the chief's? Because Sandy's is a longer report. And if we can get that one through the end of November, that's the official report on the breakdown of the two funds. But I definitely think that an analysis is needed going forward. And I have another question. We're buying a highway truck or proposing out of year-end surplus. Is there any way to get this out of year-end surplus, or how come one and not the other? I'm just throwing that out there as a question.
Anybody from?
I think I hadn't really proposed that to the town administrator. I talked with Steve Bailey, and his opinion on it I thought was very valid. He said typically the fire department has not made capital purchases without the approval of town meeting, and I think that definitely lends us credibility with the taxpayers. So that's why we haven't proposed funding it out of the end of the year surplus. Definitely, we're under a unique circumstance this year, and if the selectmen and the budget committee would like to pursue that, we can definitely look at that.
Okay,
Can
just
I
a
just
minute.
bounce off of
Betsy,
that?
hold 1 second. John, I saw you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to add something?
Just a point of order as far as Pam goes, where she's on a 5 or 6 second delay, she may have to raise her hand, and you may have to watch for her to raise her hand because it's difficult because of the delay she and I know a couple of others are on. Just an observation.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Walter, you have yours up?
I just wanted to clarify that that there hasn't been a decision made at this point in time by the select board to purchase a highway vehicle out of the operating budget. So just so that's going to be something that's going to be evaluated and discussed towards the end of the year. But I wanted to make sure that clear that the board hasn't made any official decision on that yet.
Okay, great. Thank you. Paul, you're still showing? Nope, you're not. Never mind. Betsy.
Okay, so I agree with Steve Bailey. All of these types of things should go to the public, i.e. as well as the possibility of the other truck at the end of the year. The people should have the say, but I think we need to be able to prove to the people with the analysis that the money is there. Because if I don't ask for it, somebody else is going to ask for it. So yes, vehicles should go before the people to vote on. That's been the history for us.
Betty?
Not to beat a dead horse, and I can't find it right now, but I believe it was probably in the explanation of the warrant articles. The ambulance and the tanker truck that we are already paying for. In the explanation, it said that if we were not able to make that payment, that we would give those vehicles back and lose the money that we had paid for them.
That's
That
correct.
does not seem like a good idea.
Yeah, that is correct, Betty. If the town does not approve those 2 warrant articles, the equipment goes back. Well, in this case, it just doesn't get delivered, but yeah. And I'm sure there'll be some ramifications as far as payment goes.
Just a question.
Yes,
On
Betsy.
the fire truck where it's not coming until June and we won't be making the payment until June. Same with the ambulance. Are both of those being encumbered so we don't lose that because they're going out of one fiscal year and into another?
John?
You don't have to encumber that because it's coming out of special revenue fund, and it's not like a regular operating budget item.
Okay, just want to make sure we don't lose it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the warrant article involving the potential command vehicle? Yes, Mike Jobin, another voice heard from, and then Stephen afterwards.
Yes, thank you. My question was on the department command vehicle. Is that ever something we looked at leasing rather than purchasing? Therefore, every 2 or 3 years, we'd have a safe vehicle to drive, yet we're not spending $45,000 and we can move equipment from one vehicle to the other with no expense?
Mark, any response?
Yes. Yeah. So,
Lease is a fleet.
yes, it's definitely an interesting concept. And it actually, not to speak for Glenn, but I think typically works better for police departments. So, the vehicle that we're getting is typically, as you can see with the 2006 Explorer, it's a long-term vehicle. And the theory would be when we're done with it as a command vehicle, it could move down to either a utility vehicle or if there were a need for another department. So we keep our vehicles long-term, which doesn't lend itself as well to leasing. The other thing is when we talk about graphics and whatnot, you're talking thousands of dollars to put graphics on a new vehicle. You're talking thousands of dollars to just move the existing radios and move the existing lights. So it gets pretty costly to move those things to a newer vehicle every 3 or 4 years. So that was the rationale why we didn't explore leasing for the command vehicle.
Okay, thank you. That's a fair answer.
Stephen.
My question was the exact same thing he just asked, but also, I mean, you're going to be saving money on maintenance in the long run by leasing. So that should take in the effect of transferring equipment from vehicle to vehicle, because you're not putting anything into it except oil changes. And so I don't understand why there would be more money or it'd be more of a more cost leasing as opposed to buying. I think leasing is the way to go, to tell you the truth. I mean, it can't cost that much to transfer equipment and decals and based upon to run a vehicle until the ground and spend another $45,000 in 10 years. I mean, $45,000 on a lease goes a long way. You know,
we can definitely look. We can look at that. Like I said, it is fairly expensive. New decals is about $3,500, and moving the radios and whatnot. I would think it'd be somewhere around the same. And then every time you move lights, they can be pretty fragile. So you probably have some replacement cost of emergency warning lights when you move them. But we can definitely look at it and see if it's more cost effective. I'm all for it.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Ginger, I'll turn my camera off. On my opinion on this command vehicle, a lease is a fleece. Again, you're going to pay yearly. We've had what, 14 years of use out of the command vehicle that we currently are operating. And if you average that out with ownership, you got a much better deal than you have on the lease payment with the interest rates included. A lease is a fleece. However, if it was the high dollar, like the tanker or fire truck or ambulance, lease is necessary for that maintenance and for the upkeep, because those vehicles have to be top par. But on a command vehicle, it is better to purchase and get the 14-year use out of it and maybe extended use after that. So I'm going to say that economically, this is a better deal, is to go with the flat out purchase. Thank you.
Okay, Betsy and then Mike.
Okay. On the paperwork that he's given us, it's just shy of a $12,000 fleet discount. So that alone just may wash out any savings from leasing. I mean, on a regular vehicle that you're going to turn over all the time, leasing is now the way to go. But on something like this, with your fleet discounts, you're probably better off to buy it.
Okay, Mike Jobin.
Okay, thank you. One more question. So
Sure.
on the command vehicle, if that was to be voted down, is the $5,000 going to make that vehicle safe for the next year?
The $5,000 was based on an analysis of our mechanic, and he's pretty familiar with the vehicle. And that's what he estimates it's going to cost to replace things, to fix and replace things. Now, we don't anticipate dropping the motor out of it, but that could happen. You know, we didn't anticipate the rear end or the front end drivetrain quitting, but that could happen. So he's just gone through it and anticipated what it would take to maintain the vehicle and fix things that he anticipates coming up, like rocker panels are rusted out and the frame is starting to rust. So that's going to need to be addressed within the next year. So I can't guarantee 100% we can keep it safe for the next year with $5,000, but that's what we anticipate we'll need for repairs.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, I have a quick question for you. Again, in your explanation is for the need of the vehicle. You had indicated that last year you spent nearly $5,000 on maintenance and repair for the command car.
That's correct.
What did you end up having to repair?
I don't have that in front of me right now. I know we did a lot of front end work to it. I know the brakes in the front, we repaired those, and it was more than just a pad and rotor change. We changed the pads, the rotors, the calipers, and the hoses. So that was fairly expensive to do that. We basically replaced the entire air conditioning system in the vehicle because it had deteriorated over the years. I can get you an exact printout of exactly what we did, but I think those are some of the high points.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And what I can say is, looking at your list of possible repairs and maintenance that you need to do on this for the current year, the cost of the starter, the starters on that particular year vehicle, as with mine, they either work or they don't, and there's no in between. So I'm a little curious as to how it's considered it would need to be replaced in the not too distant future. But assuming it needed to be replaced, the rear brakes, the rotors, calipers, hoses, the rocker panels repair. As most of you know, we have a repair garage. I did price things out, and the $5,000, including the repair, if not replacement, because I did price out replacing those rocker panels just for my own curiosity, the $5,000 should certainly cover them, including all the labor at the location that the town typically uses. My only deal with this whole thing is, can we get through another year, or does it have to be replaced this year?
Well, if,
regardless of its funding source, regardless of whether it comes out of the capital reserve fund or it gets raised by taxation. I just really, in my own mind, question, is this the year or can it wait a year? And I'm sorry, somebody started to speak and I didn't catch it.
the chief.
Mark, go ahead.
So I understand, and I'm definitely a conservative at heart, so I understand wanting to save money. But if we wait another year, we're going to spend $5,000 to maintain the existing vehicle at least, maybe more. And then next year we'll be in a situation where we're more dire and still have to buy the vehicle, and it's probably going to be more than $45,000 next year because prices don't go down. So I think we've reached a point where the most economical thing to do is replace the old vehicle this year and not put the money into it. But that's my 2 cents on replacing versus waiting another year. The other thing is it begins to stack up the capital reserve, the CIP items, so that we have a whole bunch of items coming up together. And that's probably not where we want to be as well.
Thank you, Mark. Pam?
Thank you.
Pam, you've got your
Ginger.
hand up.
I am going to concur. Yeah, I'm speaking. So Ginger, I'm going to concur with Betsy that I full-heartedly believe that this is an issue for the town voters to decide, the town residents. Public safety, fire department, fire and rescue, these are all in our minds right now. And I believe that it is up to the voter. People are in contact that they want us to have good quality fire and rescue. And this is all part of it, particularly for the back roads and all that the fire department has to cover. So I'm going to concur with Betsy and say this goes to the voters.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree, Pam. And regardless of how the budget committee votes to recommend or not recommend that article, it's going to the voters. So this isn't a question of if the budget committee says, no, we're not going to recommend, then the voters don't ever hear about it. They'll still hear about it. Bob?
Yeah, the selectmen will probably make the decision in terms of what the funding source will be. It's going to go to the voters in terms of whether or not they purchase the vehicle. So that's covered. I wanted to speak to, at least in favor of Mark's decision to go with the vehicle he's going with, for 3 reasons. One is, if you remember, our past chiefs basically were night people. And so that vehicle spent most of its time sitting in somebody's driveway until there was an event, and then they showed up at the event. Mark is using this to get back and forth every day. So we're putting on a tremendous amount of mileage since he's taken over as chief. The second point is when we had our last fire at the Northwood Lake, I got a chance to talk with the fire marshal as they showed up, and they have made a decision to go with pickup trucks rather than SUVs, simply because they will throw their gear and everything else after a fire into the back of the car. And the problem with vapors coming off from the vehicle, from the materials, is toxic. So they've gone to throwing the stuff in the back of a pickup truck. So a lot of departments are going to the pickup truck rather than the SUV. And the third thing is that with the chief's decision to go with the Ram, that particular engine, the gas engine that they have, has the ability to drop down to 4 cylinders rather than 8. And so the gas savings is pretty strong. I know I have the same vehicle, and I'm running on average between 16 to 18 miles to the gallon on a pickup truck with a fairly sizable capability in terms of the V8. So there are 3 points in favor of the vehicle. I'm not going to comment on the timing or the funding source, but I just wanted to support the vehicle itself.
Thanks, Bob. I've got a quick question for you as far as the 4-cylinder to 8-cylinder. is that you can order it in a 4-cylinder or an 8-cylinder?
No, the Hemi that their truck is coming with,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that's the situation because it's a fairly heavy truck. The
Uh-huh.
Hemi that it comes with drops from 4 to 8 as you get into just a routine. In other words, if you are traveling for any length of time, it will drop down to 4 cylinders once you've got motion going, so that you aren't using the extra gas mileage.
Okay. See, we're a Ford family, so I know nothing about engines in other brands of vehicles. Thank you for that info. I did not know that. I'll pass that along.
And the aluminum body Ford gets 18 driving around all the time.
Yep. Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the command vehicle? Yes, Stephen.
Sorry, 2 buttons. Was there any consideration buying like a 1-year-old vehicle? So we're not taking the hit as purchasing a new vehicle. You know, everybody knows you drive a truck off the lot, you lose 10 grand. So we're gonna spend $45,000 on a vehicle. Why can't we look at something maybe 1-year-old with low mileage that can be made into what we're looking for? Has that been considered? Anybody hear me?
Mark, did you hear that?
I did. Yes, we always consider all options. The thing is with the new vehicles, we get such a fleet discount on a new vehicle. It actually makes it less expensive to buy than a 1 or 2-year-old vehicle that we're buying at full retail.
Okay. All right, I guess I can't argue that. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. You know, I do, like I say, you do take a hit on a new vehicle coming off the lot, no matter what it is. So I was thinking maybe used 1-year-old would be an option to save some money, and hopefully we can run that for 3-4 years and maybe upgrade after we get some other stuff paid off. You know, that's a temporary fix to the current situation, so it's not so taxing to the people. You know, so if we can save 15 grand, 15 grand, 15 grand, you know, for 3 years, and we can put that money down the road, you know, and we'll have a decent vehicle that we can probably get money for in 3-4 years, as opposed to running it into the ground and get nothing for it. You know, so that's just my thought on that. You know, trying to help the situation though.
Thank you. The MSRP on the vehicle that we're buying is $46,270, and that's without any of the graphics or the radios or the cap on the back. So I think our fleet discount's around $12,000.
Shy at 12,000.
Grace, you had your hand up?
Yeah.
But you're asking for 45,000. So where's the other money coming for all the upgrades, like all the decals? Who's paying for that? Where's that coming from?
That's what I'm saying. The total package is 45,000. So that comes from our fleet discount. So we're actually only paying, I think, about 35,000 for the truck.
Okay. All right.
Grace?
There's a printout in his handout.
Betsy, hold off. Grace is next.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask a question. Why do we get, what's the discount from? Why? I didn't realize that we got a discount or that the
Yes,
town.
because we're a municipal government, we get a fleet discount.
From any dealer? Or do you
Yes.
buy it through a municipal account or something?
We buy it through a municipal account, but we can go through any dealer. Right now, we look at who has the New Hampshire state bid on the vehicles. So that could be somebody like Bonneville. It could be Central Dodge. It's whoever gives the state the best bid on the vehicle.
Okay, thanks.
Pam, you had your hand up as well, and then Betsy.
Thank you. So very, very quickly, in regarding buying a 1-year-old vehicle, currently, I just did a bunch of research on this. The state of pickup trucks in America is depleted due to production cutbacks early due to COVID, and prices are way up on used vehicles. So like so many other things, they have a bigger value because people are buying those 1 and 2 years. So the chief is absolutely 100% correct that with his fleet discount, it's a win-win situation across the board. So it is a best buy. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Pam. Betsy?
Just wanted to point out that there is a sheet in his packet breaking all of that down and shows the fleet discount.
As well as the anticipated cost for the graphics, the emergency lights.
Yeah, it's all listed.
The tray and all that. Okay, are there any other questions or comments regarding the command vehicle? As I am not seeing any, my recommendation is that, thank you, Mark, for
You're
being
welcome.
here and explaining everything. And my feeling
Thank
is it's time for a break. So, and I'm out of my element here because I'm on Zoom. My watch says it is currently 10:45. I propose a 10-minute break, or do we want to go 15, folks? Your choice. He who speaks up first wins.
10.
And
Okay, we're going for 10 minutes as of right now. Be back at 5 of 11. We'll pick up with the rest of the budget. Thank you, guys.
Hey, John, it's me.
Hi, Pam.
Just really quick, in case I lose internet today, I will bounce right back into the meeting with a backup data plan on the cell phone, or I will dial in. So just passing that along, they will not lose my vote.
Okay,
So
sounds
I'm there
good.
to go. I'm there.
Let me know how much you want me to answer questions regarding, the rest of the budget as we go along.
Sure.
And how much you want to
I
do
think
it.
an awful lot of questions have been pre-answered via Mr. Tudor's sheet and other information you provided, but I will certainly be deferring to you, particularly on the administrative budget and on the town office budgets. Absolutely.
Hey, Bob, you're no Kevin Skarupa.
My
It's snowing
go-to
like
guy.
crazy out here.
Yes. It's snowing here.
It is. It is. And if you're noticing, somebody picked, I don't know if you can see it, it's picked today. Where is it? To defrost the refrigerator. It keeps icing up. And so I thought, hey, everything in a cooler, put it out in the snowstorm and let the refrigerator defrost.
Is it snowing there yet?
Snowing here.
Oh, yeah.
Snowing hard.
Snowing hard where I am.
This wasn't supposed to start until 1.
I swear it just passes me by because it doesn't want me to have a white Christmas.
Really? It's not snowing there, Susan? Where are you?
Florida? I'm just kidding.
That's the thing about Zoom. You never know where somebody is, really.
Oh, I'm in Rochester.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you'd less of a band.
I guess. I don't know. It just, this is the time
sorry,
of year I
Susan,
want
you're
it.
not in the band. Yeah, you're not in the band.
No. This is the only time of year I want it, and for the last couple of Christmases, we haven't had it.
The other thing that's kind of fascinating is Northwood's in almost this microclimate itself, because we have the high ground. The ridge is about 800 feet, and you got the Narrows, which is dropped. And so we're not seacoast and we're not lakes region.
Right.
We got hit with the ice storm when nobody else did. So it's just, it's kind of hard to judge.
Tornadoes, good stuff.
Then when my husband was working in Stratham, he would always leave like a blizzard and go to rain. So.
Yeah, they say even Portsmouth's going to get snow today.
Ooh.
Well, I live in the
Hey,
Narrows.
Susan.
And my garden frosts before anybody else I know. I live in the most frosty spot in Northwood. I'm convinced.
The Narrows, yeah.
Yeah. Because
Well, we all have
all my
Yeah,
friends.
all the cold air goes downhill.
Yep. And it comes to my garden.
Well, I'm glad it's hitting yours and not mine. So
Yeah.
thank you, Grace.
So much for your garlic.
Yeah.
And if any of you haven't looked outside, it is snowing and it has
Yes.
been for about an hour because I've got my office window opened so that I can look outside.
Yes, it's snowing in the Narrows.
Susan,
Yeah.
who is that photobombing you?
This
That
is
orange white
Sam.
thing.
This is he's famous on Zoom for some very
Okay,
bad
so
things.
now we got the kiddies. We have to arrange a play date for you guys.
When I used to be in my kitchen before we
yeah,
put
I
together
need to
my
call
office, he would sit behind me.
Oh, wonderful, Bob. Thank you so much.
He would sit behind me and put on a show that I didn't realize was happening.
But my daughter's sitting at the vet right now outside because only the cat can go in.
Yeah, my
Just
dog.
routine, nothing serious, but She's outside, the cat's inside.
Oh, is that what they're doing?
Oh, they have been for months.
Yeah, we had to take our dog, and he's got attachment issues, so it was really hard. He thinks we're leaving him forever.
Our vet is down in Allenstown, and when I have to take the dogs in, we get to the Epsom traffic circle and start heading south on 28. They know where they're going, and they're not happy. Okay, so how many do we have back? I've got a few I don't see photos on yet, but I don't know if people have turned cameras off.
Steve McNally is clapping.
I'm not sure if that's for the weather or if that's, but yep, let's go. Or, oh, but again, thumbs up. Not sure if that's weather or let's get going. Unmute yourself, Dan. Let's find out.
I think we went through our 10-minute break.
Yep, our 10-minute break is over. So, okay, looks like we've got our quorum back anyway. So we'll move ahead here. What I'd like to do is go back to page 1. We've hit our 3 major departments. Our 4th one is the highway, and obviously we're not going to do highway today because our highway executive is out getting ready to do roads, I presume. So
Doing his job.
Cover that. Yep, doing his job. We'll cover that probably Monday night. So beginning on page 1, we have the selectmen section 41301. Do we have a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
And it would be is somebody moving the bottom line for that section?
I will move, just the selectmen one?
Correct.
I'll move, $9,735.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second by Mike Moore.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Betsy.
First line, salary line. There's 5 of them now. So how come it's not 10,500 to represent the listing on the wage sheet?
All right, I will defer to John quickly on that.
Yeah, the when I was doing this budget in general, I used the adopted 2020 down through for most of them. Walter recently did that other sheet as you requested this week, and it's different. So probably it should be adjusted to reflect that other sheet that Walter did. You are right, Betsy.
And does Walter have that number available?
I think she just gave it to us.
2,500. 2,000 for all of them and 2,500 for the chair.
Okay, and if we are, as makes sense, that we go with that, then that's going to adjust Social Security and Medicare. So we need a motion to change that salary figure.
Make a motion to amend your salary figure to the whatever Betsy mentioned, but are we going to be able to vote on it because we don't know what the other items cost?
No, we'll have to come back to it probably Monday night so that we can get the correct figures because it obviously will affect the bottom line.
I got the numbers for you. It would go to 651 for Social Security, and it would go to 152 for the Medicare.
Okay. So that gives us.
Get your bottom line.
We'll have it in a minute here.
I came up with 11,704.
Yeah, that's what I get too.
Okay.
We're using the same math system. That's good.
We are, and my calculator's working. I'm impressed. Doesn't always work that way.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend the motion to reflect the new number that you just read out.
Okay, to the 11,704.
Second,
And
Pam Sanderson.
Pam seconded. And Pam. Okay, is there any further discussion? Bob?
This is just maybe a point of order, a point of information. Is this 11,704 going to be the budget committee recommendation, or will that be a change in the select board's request?
Good question.
I'm going to defer over to Hal for an answer on that.
I don't think Hal's with us at the moment.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
I hate to say this, but I'm going to defer to John as to what the right approach is, because I've not been in the situation where we're doing a correction. So I'm sorry. I certainly think the board would support the change and go along with it, but we haven't voted on it or anything like that. So I'm not sure what the mechanism is.
Yeah, I know. I think that the budget committee makes their recommendation, then the board will vote. They could adjust some lines up and some lines down based on what the budget committee does. They could disagree with the budget committee on some lines, but the board will have to vote. So I would recommend this correction be made because it was a mistake on my part. So change it to 11,704 and see. I would expect the selectmen would adjust, but we'll see that at the next meeting.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Ginger?
Yes, Betsy.
Point of order, if they've got to revote it, can we vote it now? We have to wait.
You can vote it now.
Vote it now.
Thank you,
it's
Linda.
your budget you're working on.
That's right.
Right.
You're putting it in your line.
Right.
Over here.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Roll call. Betsy? Tom?
Yes.
Grace?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And yes. Okay, so that new figure is 11,704. Moving on to town administrator.
Just state the vote as we go.
I'm sorry?
Let's state the votes as we go.
Yes,
for the minutes.
it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10,
14.
14-0.
Thank you.
Thank you as well for reminding me, guys. I count on that. Okay, moving on to section 41302. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion recommending $114,653.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Pam. Discussion. I'm not seeing anything. So we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Betsy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Grace?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Brian? Oh, sorry, he's next on my list, but he's not here. Sorry. Bob?
Yes.
Eric? Eric, voting in favor or against?
Yes, favor.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry.
Not a problem. Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And yes, so 14-0 for 27,813. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm looking at the wrong column. 114,653. Wouldn't that have been nice? That'd have cut down the budget quite a bit, wouldn't it? Okay, next session is moderator 41303.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the amount of $889.
Okay, we've got a motion. Who's a second?
Second.
Grace, thank you. Any discussion? Betsy?
Hey, there's a couple sections together here, but that $780, how many elections is that for? And
Well, next year you have a deliberative session and a town meeting in no states, so that would be for 2.
so when I look at your salary sheet, you have merged elections and moderator together for what appears to be 4 elections at the old rate. We need 2 elections at the new rate. So there's a couple sections here that are figured at 4 elections at the old rate, so they need to be corrected.
Are you?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, your Walter sheet, you're seeing a total of 6860, correct?
I come up with 3,705 based on 2 elections at the newer rates. So that's my question. They don't match.
For both the moderator and the election line down in
The
41404.
moderator, looking back at adopted is the same. So this one may be okay, but the others, even though you've merged them into one line, the problem may be in the other section.
Can we deal with that when we get there?
Yep.
You're
can.
probably right, Betty, because it was somewhat confusing where you're working off a default budget that wasn't increased to go to 4 elections. So that's part of the problem.
Okay, so we'll get to that when we get to the election sections. Are there any other questions regarding the moderator section? Okay, seeing none. Betsy?
Ginger?
Yes. Oh, hang on.
I didn't get my hand up. I don't have the salary lines in front of me, but is the dollar figure for the moderator figured on just the hours of the election itself? Or does it take into consideration, as happened this year with COVID and moving locations and so forth, a huge amount of time for the moderator to get the physical space set up and to plan to accommodate COVID people and people who didn't want to wear masks, et cetera? Or is it just the 12 hours of the election? I see Betsy ready to answer that question.
Well, it hasn't been an hourly wage in the past. Recently, maybe, but it used to just be a stipend payment.
And-
It
and
wasn't
look-
based on hourly.
So what is it?
You don't want to know what it used to be.
Hal
Used
has his hand up and where he used to be moderator, Ginger.
Okay,
might be a good one to
Hal?
call on.
Yeah, at least for the years that I was moderator, it was always hourly, and we did adjust it. And I'm pretty sure that's what Keith is doing now. The school is a fixed amount, but for all the years that I was moderator, it was a hourly basis.
And did that include both the time you spent at the sessions themselves, but also other time spent enacting that role?
Exactly, Tom. So for example, the preemptive work, where you would go look at the setup, you would make all the arrangements, you would do the ballot testing, you test the machine, all those were hours that I submitted and then was are compensated for. So yes, I guess the simple answer is yes, it includes all those hours. And you're right. If you look at if you just took a look at the polling place this past election, it was probably 2-3 times as complex as anything I ever did. To Keith and Marissa's credit, it was great, but yes, they put a lot of time in.
Huge.
So I would make a recommendation that the compensation reflects the time needed to do the job. Let's hope that 2021 is less complicated, not only only two elections, but also less complicated having done it once.
Yeah, I just back calculated, it's about 65 hours, Tom. So, I don't recollect exactly, but I know like the deliberative session was maybe order of magnitude 20 hours till you did everything. And then the election itself was more because you had to do all the counting, the ballot testing, the ballot counting itself, and obviously the election itself. So if those are the only things we have to do at the $12 an hour, the 65 seems about right to me, but I'm not moderator right now.
Let's see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. What's anybody's preference? Is anybody thinking that particular line, the salary line, should be changed? And if so, to what? Bob?
I would say just leave it as is, so that there's the authority to spend. If you notice the last 2 years, neither myself nor Keith have put in for that. But should you have a moderator that decided to do so, you want to have the ability for the town to pay them.
Oh, absolutely. And if in fact, whomever is moderator chooses to put in for more hours that they might spend or whatever, that line can always be overspent and covered somewhere else. So I would not suggest reducing it by any stretch. And if it turns out that we have a good year, please, we should be all set. I would think. Does anybody else have a differing opinion? Betty? You gotta unmute yourself, hon. Betty, you're muted.
That do it?
Now we
Yes.
can hear your lovely voice.
Yeah. That explains why I didn't get to make any motions.
Probably.
As you said, you certainly shouldn't decrease it. I guess just keeping it as a placeholder with the possibility of adding to, or should we change it to and call it an hourly? Or that would still leave it wide open, wouldn't it?
It would still leave it wide open, I would think. My suggestion, for what it's worth, is to leave it as is, and if the hours total up that the moderator submits to more than the $780, the line gets overexpended, and then we'll have perhaps a better history for the following year. Okay.
That's why you're the chairman.
I'm sorry?
That's why you're the chairman.
Yeah, right. Thanks for that. Bob?
Just as a point of information, yesterday Municipal Association came up with guidelines for holding the deliberative session virtually.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, God, no.
I ran into Keith at Hannaford's, it's the place I get all my information, a couple days ago, and I asked him if he'd heard anything. He says, I'm really hoping that we can space everything out and have it in person. So that ought to be fun.
I'll post those tonight to the group that I normally send to. And Ginger, I can put your name on that list.
I would appreciate that, Bob, just so that I can take a look, because I've got the same issue for our public hearings that we have to have on our budget. So I would appreciate that.
I don't know. John, do you know anything more from the
I saw the same thing. But if you can forward it, that's fine, or I could forward it. But Municipal Association put it out. It's probably on their website too.
It is.
For guidance. I didn't change the budget any because of it coming out. I just think it's going to be confusing.
Yeah, that should be fine, I would think. Does anyone else have any questions or comments regarding the moderator section?
Can I assume that as a supervisor of the checklist who has to be there, can I assume that this is recommendations and how to do it if you want to do it remotely, or are they making a strong pitch for everybody to do it remotely? Because I would assume if it was, and what's the Secretary of State's office for elections have to say, if anything?
Excellent point.
Here, let me pull it up.
Looks like we've all got a little bit of research to do, folks, between now and our deliberative sessions. So we won't solve that today. So let's move on. If everybody can unmute so you can vote. Betsy, this is to retain the 889 for the moderator section. Betsy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Grace?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve Robinson?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And yes, 14-0. Okay, moving on to section 41309, which is executive office.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the amount of $237,259.
Second.
Betty seconded, okay. Okay, discussion. Betsy,
I found one issue on the wages in this section and was the land use specialist salary. When you multiply the wage sheet across, it comes to 32,266 instead of 35,493.
John?
She was, yeah, if I may, she was given a raise that does not reflect it in Walter's sheet. I could, let me see if I can find that number for you. But that, I just, you're right, Betsy, we'll look into that, but she was given a raise, I don't think, maybe it, no, maybe it does, 1412. I take that back. What is it again that doesn't add up across?
Hourly rate times the hours. This one goes down a little bit and the other one over on the police commission side goes up a little.
Oh, okay, probably all the hours. Yeah. So how would you divide it up?
I'm going based on your sheet of, it says 25 hours in land use and 3 hours on the other when we get to that one. So 25 hours, 52 weeks times the 2482 comes to the 32,266.
do they even out between the two of them?
Okay,
Betsy?
the wage sheet is correct. The amount on the budget sheet is where the error is on this one.
Right, but you mentioned the other department. If you added up
Now, wait until we
the
get
two
to that.
amounts,
Keep them separate. The wage sheet is of the 32,266 is correct. The amount on the budget sheet is where the error is on this one.
Yeah, I probably kept the 3 hours that should have gone separately into the police and kept it on this line when I did this calculation. So
No, I checked that out. That wasn't the answer either.
it wasn't.
So,
Huh?
no. So 32,266 matches the wage sheet is what belongs in this one, and I'll do the other one when we get to it. If you look on page 2 of the wage sheet down near the bottom, the 32,266 appears there, which is what should appear instead of the 35,493.
where in the operating budget does it show that additional 3 hours, Betsy, do you know?
That's under police commission. I'd rather not mix the two up.
I know, I'm just looking for it. I want to see something. And I wasn't sure where it would be.
Okay, what I had used instead of the 25 hours, I had used 27.5. If you look at the other employee sheet that's included, I had figured her as 27.5 hours on the municipal side, plus, you know, whatever was on the
So that works with the 27.5 hours.
Yeah,
the wage sheet is based on 25 hours.
Yeah, and when I use 27.5 here, that would have, that's how I got the number I had, but I'm willing to go with the 32,266 number for 25 here, and then we'll adjust on the police when we get there. As you say, it's between two departments and just kind of adds out, so.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where in the police budget that line is.
There's a separate police administration budget. Police.
Oh, is that in commission?
It's totally separate from what we're
I
doing.
know that. I'm trying to see where it is, Betsy.
I'm on page 7.
Yeah, police commissions, page 7, 42,111.
That one should go up to 3,871.92. Which is what you have on the sheet.
I had treated her as 27.5 hours on just the on the land use side.
That works. You just need to correct the wage sheet.
To reflect that it's 27.5 hours.
Vehicle off the road into a guardrail in the area of 43, second caller advised 48, Mountain View Road.
You can take care of that.
Okay, so I'm back to,
So if we correct the wage sheet to reflect 27.5 hours for Linda, then we're all set then, correct?
Yep.
So we'll do it that way. We'll change the Adobe sheet that Walter prepared to 27.5.
Okay, I'm all set.
so the figure that's in line 191 will remain as is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Okay. Are there any other questions
I have one.
regarding the executive office?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
On line 690, there's a large increase in equipment. What equipment is that?
There's a computer replacement schedule that is also in your packet. If you look, you will find there are various changes, including to the firewall, individual desktops. It's designed to replace computers every 5 years. And so that is the computer replacement scheduled items for 2021.
Thank you.
And you'll find 2 of the computers are in other departments because there were departments that had equipment lines. You'll see one in the treasurer, one in the building inspector, but the rest of the computers are here on this line along with the stuff related to the firewall.
Okay, any other questions involving the executive office?
Just a question on those computers. Has anyone ever looked at leasing computers versus buying them every 5 years?
I haven't. Basically, computers are a disposable item now. When you're, you're going to have to replace them every 5 years anyway. So, whether you lease them or not. So I think if you're leasing them, you're paying interest. So that's why I usually don't consider leasing.
I know in the business world, we leased everything from a computer standpoint. And they got
the servers and the mainframes and when you're not talking, small desktops that are under $1,000, that may, I just don't think it makes sense right now.
Any other questions or comments regarding the executive office section? Okay, seeing none. Betsy? Tom?
Yes.
Thank you. Grace?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And yes, so we have 14-0. Okay, next section is 41401. And that is restoration of records. Anyone choose to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Betty, and who's a second?
I second. Mike Jobin.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we have $3,930 proposed. Are there any questions or discussion? Betsy?
Just have a comment that this hasn't been done for several years and we have several things piling up that need to be done. So if we end up with a default to budget, this needs to be a priority. We're way behind and stuff is just going to end up getting dumped and we're going to regret it later. So it really needs to be done.
John?
I realize we've had turnover in the town clerk's office and everything. Perhaps this year we could do one because we're in good shape as far as year end, year to date. And I don't know if Walter could talk to Marissa or somebody who might know who best to, what needs to be, what would be the top of the list, or somebody on this committee might know what's the best item to do next. But I would think we could try to get that done.
I think the records retention committee should be able to prioritize based on, what's existing right now, providing there's some history available.
I see Hal's got his hand up.
Yeah, Hal?
This is something we've discussed several years, and one budget ago, we had proposed trying to get two, quote, sets of documents done. The oldest of the documents are so old that they have to be hand processed, and it costs us 4 or 5 times the cost of a new document to do that. We tried to get that done over the past couple of years, and we never could do it. And Betsy's absolutely right. We need to actually play some catch up here. And if the budget committee sees fit, this would be a good one to double or triple.
I'll second that.
Betty?
Yes.
Do you have your hand up for a comment?
No, I'm just holding my head up.
I don't blame you. I'm doing that too. It's my little head thing.
Is there,
Ginger?
Betsy, go ahead.
is there any chance of any money in this year's budget to do some of it? And what's left over in FY20? Or this on calendar 20?
That's what Walter mentioned about having the committee look at what they could do out of this year's budget.
And which committee would look at that, John?
By law, there's a records management committee that is consistent. It statutorily states who's on the committee.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we have one.
I don't think we've ever had
Well,
one.
you probably have one that hasn't met.
I don't think we've ever had one.
Yeah, I don't either, John. Whether we should have or whatever, I don't believe we ever did. So that would be good information to get started as to who's statutorily supposed to be on it, so we can get it together and do our thing.
I think it's in the record retention statute. It's in the 30s.
Okay, well, I think there are a few of us that'll check that one out, and we'll get back to the Board of Selectmen with that. In the meantime, what's your, Hal?
Yeah, I guess I would just also ask Walter, I think it's a good idea if we can do some stuff this year yet to think about that. I would just ask Walter how we do that, you know, in terms of if the work is really done next year, can we really put it into this year? Because it is time consuming, so he'll have to work that out. But it's a good suggestion if we have the money and can definitely push it back into this year. I think that's a great idea.
Walter?
I was just going to say, if we're able to, secure a contract prior to the end of this month, then we can encumber, the current year's appropriation to get us started, and then have the new appropriation available to help us continue the process.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing.
Good.
We concur, Walter.
The committee consists of the or either the official or the designee of the clerk, treasurer, assessor, and tax collector.
Clerk, treasurer, assessor, and
Tax collector, which in Northwood's case is one person.
Right.
They are a committee to govern the disposition of municipal records. And they're responsible for the retention of the types of records. That's 33A.
Thank you. Well, I'm guessing that that's something like most committees needs appointments by the board, by the selectmen to get that officially designated?
I'm not sure because it specifies by law who's on it, but
Oh,
I suppose I suppose approval of a designee in place of the assessor, for example. I don't think you're going to get probably Jeff. He's really busy right now with explaining tax rates. So if you want to get
Right.
something done quickly, you're probably going to want to have somebody appointed as a designee.
Okay. Well, that's work for a day other than today. So we've got that in mind. Hal?
I know maybe we don't have an official committee, but I'm pretty certain that we know which records need to come next.
I agree.
Different books, so I think it's pretty clear what we need to do.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the records have to be done, period.
And they know the book numbers and different things.
Right.
Yeah, they know the next ones that are coming up in the sequence.
Bob?
My question would be, should we table this and come back to it? Or should we, and wait until the selectmen have made a decision on this, or continue on and vote in what's there?
I have my opinion, but Hal's got his hand up. Hal?
My opinion is we are so far behind, it would make sense if the board, I think it makes sense to try to do everything we can on this, which means we'll try to push some of the work into this year's budget if we have money. And I still think it would behoove the budget committee to consider putting more money in next year. If we don't start working on catching up, it's going to get worse and worse. So I think we all just need to try to do as much as we can on this. And like I say, if the budget, we'll try to do our part this year. If the budget committee can help us on that next year, that'd be appreciated.
Do you have a proposed amount?
Well, we traditionally had done them in, I don't remember the increments, Ginger, I'm sorry, but so many books or so many pages or whatever. And the current budget number, as best I know, reflects that sort of standard block.
Okay.
So we could, theoretically do another quote block, i.e. double the money. And that's what we actually had in the proposed budget a year or two ago. So my suggestion would be if the budget committee feels strongly about it, double the amount.
Betty, I see your hand up.
Yep. As the one who made the original, whatever. I amend my motion to doubling, and I hope somebody's got a calculator, doubling the $3,930.
Which would be 7,860.
That sounds good.
Betsy?
So this 3,930 has been a figure we've used for several years, so it's probably way outdated. It's probably way low to begin with.
So perhaps the best thing to do would be to suggest that selectmen and our town hall staff do a little research as far as what the new cost would be to do that certain block that Hal would be referring to, and see what the new figure would be for one block.
Yeah.
And then come back to this once we have that more accurate figure, because it's, Betsy mentioned, it's probably way outdated as far as cost goes. Betsy?
Offer something. We just round it to 10,000 and call it even. I mean, by the time they do research and get back, we may be done with all of this. It can be amended later, but no, you know. What's Hal
Walter,
thinking?
John,
Work
Hal,
for
what's
me.
your thoughts?
Well, if we're going to try to do this, at least some of this year, we'll have updated numbers and can report back. But I think Betsy's right. If there's more that we can do, we'll just do it next year.
John?
Yeah, I suggest you put a number on and move on. We can always adjust it at the budget public hearing.
Correct.
Yes, that's true too.
Correct. So do I have, Betty, you had made an amendment, which you didn't get a second to. Do you want to amend your amendment? Or do we want to pull back the original and just start fresh?
Start fresh with a figure of $10,000.
Okay, so Mike Jobin, do you rescind your second?
He's muted.
Sorry about
Nothing.
that. I do.
Okay, and Betty, do you rescind your original motion?
I do, and I move to change the amount to $10,000.
And I will second that.
Terrific. So we have a new motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. Betsy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes, yes.
Grace?
Yes.
Dan?
Ginger, Dan stepped out for a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Are you checking your text? That's all for now. I don't want to interrupt you, but when you have a chance, just so you know who's coming in and out if somebody
Right.
does.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Linda. This is all new to me. Mike Moore,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mike Jobin,
Yes.
and yes, so 13-0. Okay. We're up to voter registration, 41402. Do we have a motion to get started?
I would like to make a motion for $2,183 for voter registration.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Betty, thank you. Discussion. Betsy?
This section and the next section are two that are based on 4 elections at the old rate, and it should be 2 elections at the new rate. So that's where the adjustments need to be. I don't know how you want to handle it.
And what number would you put in there, Betsy?
I'm just wondering if the difference between the hourly rate and reducing it by 2 elections, if it pretty much evens out.
A little less, whatever you want to do. You went from $8 an hour to 12, and you're doing 2 elections instead of 4. or two.
So if anything, this would be slightly over.
Yeah, I'm looking at what we spent in 2019, but that was at the old rate. So it's basically, you know, somewhere in between, but I didn't multiply them all out.
Right. If this is, in my opinion, if this is just slightly over with the new rate and reducing from 4 elections to 2, although I just, never mind, that's, my thought isn't gonna work.
But Ginger, instead of fooling with it because of COVID,
right?
And who knows? Let's leave it alone, but just make a note that it needs to
It
be.
might end up being over a little.
We need
Yeah.
to watch the 2 elections and the 4 elections in the future.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Tom?
I'm a supervisor of the checklist, so this affects me directly, so I'm going to abstain from participation.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on the voter registration section? 41402. Okay, seeing none. Betsy?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, you said you're abstaining?
Yeah.
Grace?
Yes.
Dan? Oh, I'm sorry, never mind. Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And yes. So the vote is 12-0-1. Okay, moving on to our next section, which is elections, 41403. Do we have a motion?
A motion to approve $4,765.
Second.
Thank you, Betty and Grace. Is there any further discussion?
Anybody that's a ballot clerk should abstain here.
This is true.
So I abstain, so somebody else has to make the motion.
Well,
Or
I think you just abstain
just
from
won't
voting.
vote.
I don't think you have
I
to
just won't
abstain from
vote.
making a motion.
Okay.
Linda, is that correct?
Well, it's cleaner if it's someone else.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, so Grace made the motion. Who's doing the second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. For 4,765 for elections, Betsy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Grace?
Yes.
Dan's still gone. Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty is abstaining, correct, Betty?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
I abstain as well. I'm a ballot clerk.
Yep, thank you. Pam?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I am also abstaining. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Vote is 10-0-3. Okay. moving right along. Let's see if we can get through finance. So section 41501. Do we have a motion?
I would like to move $99,215.
Second.
And Betty is a second. Okay. Discussion.
What's the current status of the staffing of the finance office?
John, please field that question.
We interviewed candidates recently. We anticipate continuing actively. We re-advertised. In the spring when we advertised, we actually had 2 candidates who turned the offer down because the pay wasn't high enough. We then decided to wait until after the town administrator was hired so that he or she, in this case he, could be involved. Walter and I put out the advertisement. Walter, I, and Greg Colby, one of the consultants for finance, have interviewed at this point. And that's the best I could do for the status. Our hope is to have somebody on board before the end of the year or right after the end of the year, depending upon the notice they have to give.
Thank you, John. Other questions, comments? Tom?
John, does that, depending on the notice they have to give, does that imply that you have a candidate in mind and you're going to make an offer? Or are you still in the interviewing mode? Because you said we were interviewing.
We have a candidate in mind from the most recent interview. We have to, I think Walter will be doing background checks and other things next week to see if we're ready to proceed. The selectmen would, the earliest they'd be meeting to make a decision is December 15th. Assuming somebody had to give 2 weeks notice, that puts it into the beginning of the next year. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Yes, I'm happy to see it sooner rather than later, maybe.
Well, like I said, we've made the offer twice and been turned down in the end. So hopefully this time it will work.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yes.
Are there other questions or comments regarding finance? Betty?
No, sorry, holding my head up.
You're holding your head up again. Okay. Betsy?
Software, are we looking at something else or waiting for the new person to come on board, or what are we doing there?
Yeah, in part waiting for the new person to come on board. As I think you know from an answer to a question I sent out to the budget committee, the Pro Fund, we received notice 10 years ago now at this point that they were going to be discontinuing new enhancements and support. The town did appropriate money that was committed for an upgrade to a different program through the same company. The town backed away from that this year, received credit for that amount of money. We're hoping to be able to proceed. In fact, I think if you look at the warrant article that is the last one on the list, it's basically using the money that was returned that we didn't use to upgrade so that we can proceed next year and hopefully with an upgrade, but with the input from Walter and the new finance person.
Okay. Other questions or comments regarding the finance administration section?
Can I assume, Walter and John, that the Municipal Association has recommendations to make as to what system software is best for towns like ours, so we're just not running on inertia and trying to be experts in our own little way?
No, the municipal association doesn't go down that path. They don't make recommendations on software. Walter and I belong to the Managers Association. I used to, and Walter still does, belong to the Government Finance Officers for New Hampshire, and we find the two of those organizations more useful to talk to other finance people and managers in New Hampshire who use the system.
Okay, Mike Jobin, you had your hand up?
I did. I have a question in regards to the postage line, 625. It seems like every department has a postage line and they're way off, way under, very rarely on. And it looks like $650 was adopted, but nothing was used. Are we using another department to mail?
Yeah, basically, we've tried to move all except for the tax postage into one department. And because of the default budget, it keeps showing up where it was on the default budget rather than the consolidation that we tried to make as far as the postage expenditure goes. So that if you look at, there's one department that's way over. I think it must be.
Yeah, it's like 10 grand.
Yeah, the executive budget, the 2000, the default budget is 3,000 and the budget's 8,000. And that's
Okay.
what happened. We tried to consolidate all the postage. It just isn't reflected because you keep going to default budget. So you have all the old numbers appear, but we're spending it out of one account rather than try to track it individually. As I said, with the exception of the tax collector.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding finance administration? Well, since Betty's hand is just holding up her head, I'm going to assume that she doesn't have a question. Okay, let's take a vote, folks. Betsy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Grace?
Yes.
Mike Moore?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike Jobin?
Yes.
And yes. So that is 13-0 in favor. And according to my watch, it is 12 o'clock. So I would suggest we take 30 minutes for lunch, break, whatever you want to call it. The snow appears to be picking up. So if we take, I'm looking out my window here. You don't want to see it if you don't have a window nearby.
Get out
If we
mine.
take 30 minutes for lunch, then we get back and maybe we can get quite a bit more done today.
If you hurry, you can do some cross-country skiing out there.
Yeah, that's a thought I will pass on. Thank you, John. Okay, folks, let's be back at 12:30. Enjoy lunch.